Research purposes, goals, questions, and hypotheses tend to represent one of three types of claims: frequency, correlation, or causal. In other words, they tend to represent an interest in describing the levels of a variable, understanding how two variables interact, or the degree to which a change in one variable causes a change in another variable. Note that a causal claim requires a manipulated variable. In other words, it requires an experiment. Frequency and correlation claims are based on measured variables. Our focus will be on designing a correlational study. In other words, a study that provides knowledge about the general relationship between two variables. I have a feeling the basic idea of the difference between a research question and a research hypothesis is pretty straightforward. But sometimes when we're bringing together several ideas like we do in the introduction, we can lose track, so I thought it might be helpful to highlight how they're similar and how they're different. Both a question and a hypothesis identify the variables of interest. Both questions and a hypothesis are guided by research and guide research. Questions might address a gap in the research, or theories, or extend the findings by asking about a new variable. Hypotheses make specific predictions, given the findings from other work or relationships suggested by the theories. The idea of both the question and the hypothesis, though, is that they're the starting point for another study. That can be less obvious with a hypothesis. Sometimes it's easy to write a statement of fact instead of a prediction to be tested. That reflects the difference between the two. A hypothesis makes a specific prediction about the relationship between two or more variables, whereas a question just says, is there a relationship? When we write a hypothesis for an association claim or correlation study, it can be tricky to avoid wording it as a causal claim. We obviously want to avoid using the word cause in a hypothesis for this type of study, but it's not always as easy as that. We also want to avoid phrases that suggest any sort of dependent relationship, such as if and then or when and will. One way to think about it is that an association hypothesis might feel a little bit more broad. Even if the direction of the relationship is predicted, it's framed by saying the variables are related or associated. You might remember I mentioned we tend to describe the structure of an APA-style proposal as being like a big funnel. It starts with the general topic and narrows to the methods for testing a specific hypothesis. That can help us think about the source of our hypothesis. It'll be based on the knowledge we present in the lit review. Sometimes I think about the literature review as being like telling the story of what we know from previous work, and the hypothesis is the natural conclusion. No plot twists in APA style.